These are two basic things that we have to see, like who is receiving. So irrespective of type of letter that you will be writing this letter, you have to see who is at the recipient end. So we can find this part in the bottommost part of the letter where we can find the writing task. We can find the recipient over here. Second thing that you have to see is what is the issue actually. If you are writing a letter of referral, if you're writing a letter of discharge, if you're writing a letter of transfer, maybe, or a request letter, in any of the type of letter, you have to see that who is the recipient. According to the recipient, will be, like organizing the information. So the first criteria is the purpose of writing. There's a common debate among the students. They do mention introduction as a purpose. Like they just say, okay, my purpose is clear. What we see in their letter, like there are a lot of mistake in the body of the letter, and even there are they have masked the most important detail. Still, they are questioning that the purpose of writing is clear. So they are saying introduction as a purpose. It's not the case. Your purpose of writing has to be clear in the introduction, but I would say that your purpose of writing is your focus of writing task. It's not only your that you should clearly mention the reason of writing in the introduction, but it's your clear focus throughout the task that we can label as a clear purpose, right? Anyhow, now purpose has been directly related, or it has a deep integration with the content, that is selection of the case notes. In the case notes, you can see that we have three different information. First and foremost is that we have relevant information, relevant with reference to, again, purpose. What we have in the purpose, like who is the reader or maybe recipient. And secondly, if we are, let's say, referring this patient or discharging the patient, so what is the reason we are discharging, or what is the plan that has to be followed? So accordingly, you have to see if I am selecting the information in the case note, is it relevant or not? Similarly, there will be some information that is semi-relevant, right? So do not, okay, that is optional. You can write and you can omit, it's your call. Then we can see some information that is totally irrelevant. So you're not supposed to write it down, the irrelevant details. No matter what, you should not write it down, irrelevant details. We have not to miss anything relevant, should not miss. You have to write it down no matter what. Now this is optional thing. If you want to write, if you want to omit, it's your call. Afterward, we have organization and layout. Now the layout part mean like your formatting, which include your like number of paragraph, for example, or how would you write down the paras? Like it should be left justified and leave one line between the paragraph. Then how to write down the address, salutations. It's come under the layout. Now organization itself is something that is a deep criteria. Organization mean, in simple word, like where to write which thing. Basically, it's the case dependent. We have to see in organization, there are certain time we have to prioritize the detail on each other. There would be some information that might be more important as compared to the information that is less important. So let's say if we have a case and like urgent referral letter, it's a commonly practiced that we prefer to start from today's visit, because we believe that today's or the recent history is more important than the previous visits. So that's why we need to prioritize that particular detail. I'll give you an example in this lecture so that we can better understand. Then we have the conciseness and clarity. What we have in the conciseness and clarity, although you have to write it down in the given frame of 180 to 200 words, but it does not mean that you miss something important. First of all, it has a direct relationship with the criteria of content. That is, if you have selected the relevant information, you are going to write in the given window. Second thing, it is related to the summary skill. As the name indicate, you have to concise the information. So after you have selected the relevant information, you have to summarize the less relevant detail. No matter what, you have to summarize the less relevant detail. And you have to expand the relevant detail at the same time. Clarity is the clubbing of the information. For example, we have to organize the information as per the sequence of not the card, but sequence of the important event. For example, if we have in the notes, you can see there might be written in this way. Let's say crushing chest pain. Let's say we have written as like chest pain, then they have write it down in the same letter. Let's say asthma version. If this is today visit, and then we have, let's say, angina, no effect. So we can see that this should be written with that visit, like with that line. Today he presented to my clinic. At that time he was having crushing chest pain. Despite taking angina, his pain did not relieve. Beside that, he has been having asthma, let's say like that. So candidates just follow the sequence of the information. You should not follow the sequence from the information. You have to organize the information in reference to make it more clear, make it more comprehensible, and you have to learn the summary skill at the same time so that you can summarize the less relevant detail. The next point criteria is the genre and style. In terms of genre and style, you have to see that this is your technical register, I would say, or in linguistic, that means that relevant vocabulary that we have to use. So here, the language formation is always technical, because it's a conversation between two doctors. So that's the reason we have to make sure that you should use the technical language. Technical language does not mean to overuse the abbreviations, to use the acronyms. However, it should be expanded as per the guideline, right? So in the honor, I mean the mode of communication should be technical. You have to follow the formal way of writing. You should use the technical writing, expand the, you can say, abbreviations and acronyms. Lastly, and make sure that you have a polite tone. The last part of the criteria is the language part. So in language, we have tenses, we have sentences, and so on. So these are 6 basic points in your writing task. Wait, yeah. So let's say, if you can see there, whenever you see the case notes, you'll go to this part, the last part. You have to see that to whom we are writing this letter. The first part of the criteria, as we discussed earlier, the first part of the criteria you have to see. So here, we can see that we are writing this letter to the palliative care nurse. It's not common in medicine that you would be writing directly to the palliative care nurse. But let's say if you got a letter in the writing task, so as per the criteria, we have to see to whom are we writing this letter. The first point in the purpose of writing. So we are writing this letter to the palliative care nurse. So what is the reason of writing? We cannot find this thing over here. We have to see the last part to have better understanding. So as you can see now, like we have a patient who's at terminal stage of cancer, and patient want to die beside her family member beside her, and now discharge plan. The bold details we can see that home visit for pressure point, the dietary plan, psychological support, and the religious support. So in this regard, now this is the focus of writing. According to this focus, you would go on and select the writing task, select the case note, sorry. So in view of the discussion we have had right now, so DOB is important. Let's say height, weight is important. Now BMI is also important. And this is the date on which we are writing this letter. Secondly, if you can see there, it's a retired teacher, for example. It's important, live with her husband in Coburg. It's important point. Married and 3 children. Why it's important, you can ask, because of the psychological support, number one. And number second thing is whenever patient, anyone who's going to pay a home visit, if that person does not know the patient, we must incorporate the socioeconomic details of the patient. But in this case, it's relevant to the psychological support that we discussed. Afterward, we can see there that we have this history, such as non-smoker, it can be omitted, non-drinker, it can be omitted, it can also be omitted actually. Now the allergic to seafood, it's important point. With reference to diet, like we have a dietary plan, that's the reason we should not miss that thing. We have to write it down. Now we can see that the family history of diabetes, hyperglycemia, hypertension for the palliative care nurse and for the palliative care is not relevant. We should not write it down. Similarly, for chickenpox and mumps, it's not relevant. We should not write it down. Now, diabetes, yeah, it's relevant. With reference to diet and wound care, it's relevant point. We can move on. Now, you can see if you got this letter in the exam, this is not only written in the 3 lines, this would be written maybe in 1 page. But still, you can see that all these details, such as radiotherapy and mastectomy, might not be that much significant for the nurse. So we can just write it down terminal cancer. No need to expand that details. Or else, if needed, we can just write the last line. His cancer has metastasized to the pulmonary secondaries. That's it. Anyhow, so you can see there, afterward, we have the discharge plan that has to be written. Remember that in a letter of discharge, you should summarize the ward history. You should summarize if there is any. You should summarize the rehabilitation, but you always have to expand the discharge plan. So let's say if we are going to write this letter today, in discharge plan, we have to incorporate all these details, right? We have to incorporate all these. We can write it down. Let's say, dear nurse, the format, leave 1 line, and let's say I'm writing this letter of discharge, or I am writing to request you So we can see that we can write down this as introduction. I'm writing this letter of discharge, or I'm going to request you regarding the provision of palliative care services for Mr. Harley, who has been discharged on her request with terminal stage of cancer. Discharged today, right? We can write it down. Afterward, we can write it down the next paragraph. Okay. Afterward, we can write it down the next paragraph. Whatever you believe is important, we should start from that particular information. The formally we can write it down. The patient's socioeconomic details in this case can be written. Let's say Mrs. Harley, a retired person. Let's say, I think it's US teacher, who has been living with all the detail related to the family. This is the one format. You can write it down the socioeconomic details, including the diabetes point and food allergies as well over here in this paragraph, one of the format. Then we can start from the pressure point here in the next paragraph. Anyhow, but I'm not following this format. I'm just changing it a bit. I'll show you how. Can you see the notes, please? Okay. So now we will be discussing about the case. For her. Then please do not wait to contact me if you have any further queries. Then yours faithfully, comma, and you can write down doctor. So I believe that this is the letter that we have written. If you like to ask any question over here, please feel free to ask me. I'd like to ask you, candidates. If you like to ask any question, please feel free to ask me. Yeah. Why faithfully? Because when we don't have the name to whom we are writing over here, let's say, if you can see that there is no name, palliative care nurse, then we should end the letter with faithfully. Right, sir? Is it clear? Okay. Sir, first paragraph. Okay, just a minute. No, not first two paragraphs are not purpose. Your focus of writing is whole purpose. It's not the, as you ask this question, if you can see, let's say if I have written this letter, if it's focused on the palliative care, if this whole letter is focused on the palliative care, then my purpose is clear. But let's say if I'm not focusing on the palliative care, then my purpose will be out. If you have the name, yes, we can write down sincerely. After writing faithfully, we should read one line. Okay.
Sir, kindly show the letter on screen not coming.
Which letter, ma'am?
Just what you have written.
I will show you. It's on the group actually. I will show you. You have to leave space, one space or two. It's the after the faithfully. You can write on one or two lines. Better to choose page two line because this is your what we can say signature lines, right? So can you see now screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if you
सर
have any
सेकंड
question,
पैराग्राफ पे सर सेकंड पैराग्राफ पे आपने सर फुल स्टॉप यूज किया सर
my writing is clear. But if my focus is not clear, then you can see that as per the question, how can we understand the six criteria in this letter? If you can see if the focus of writing is clear throughout the letter, it means that I have addressed the purpose of writing in the task. My reason of writing is clear in the introduction, and accordingly, the thing has been prioritized. For example, the pressure point care we believe is the most important point written in the second paragraph, expansion of the purpose. Then we have the dietary guideline, then we have the psychological support, can be written over here, right? Anyhow, so we can see the selection. We have not written anything related to the family history, it's not relevant to the case. We have not written anything related to chickenpox, not relevant. And regarding to the organization, we believe that the sport, for example, for pressure point, should be written in priority, followed by the dietary advice and then psychological support as per the organization of the information. Now, in terms of conciseness and clarity, as you can see, there are very less information in the discharge plan. So, not the conciseness, but expansion. We try to expand the information over here and make it more clear with the use of the cohesive devices such as this, therefore, we have used thus, we have used hence over here to make it more clear. You can use at this time of distress, such lines can help you to, like make it more clear to provide your information. In terms of her dietary advice, it will give you a clear picture that why you are writing about this paragraph, right? Anyhow, so this is something. And regarding language, you can see most of the language that we have been using over here in the present form and in the instruction format. Like say she has developed bed source, present form. If you could educate a patient regarding her dietary guidelines, she needs to follow. This is something we are writing in the present simple as per the instruction. So we'll try to address all the criteria with reference to the marking criteria that has been, like documented in the details in the letter of discharge. but it should be in instructional format. So before we can proceed further, if you'd like to ask any question, please feel free to ask me.